All right, what's going on? So, I recently had an experience that has led to a lot of contemplation and introspection regarding the issue of sex and the orgasm and the sexual degeneracy and deviancy that we can witness on a daily basis all around us. This transpired recently when I was in the process of having an orgasm. It almost was a situation where I was going to stop in the middle of it because I had this thought jump into my awareness as the process was unfolding that went something along the lines of, what is this all about? What are you doing right now? Why are you doing this? And sure, I've had those thoughts before in many different contexts, but never during the actual orgasm itself. And so I'm thinking, what is it about this act that has such a hold on everyone, that is so addicting and forms the basis of the actions of so many people, whether it's conscious or subconscious? Obviously, I'm a male, and so I will be giving a male perspective here. But hopefully some of this will be applicable to the female perspective, just maybe in a different way. I'll be discussing a different anatomy and a different mentality, but it should be relatively the same at the core of it all. Well, especially when it comes to masturbation. I was like everyone else when I was a teenager and went through puberty and then discovered the act of masturbation, in the sense that I was having orgasms all of the time. And everything around me was reinforcing this behavior as both normal and something that I should be doing. And so I never was given the information in any way that would bring any of that into question. And accordingly, this was a practice, a habit that I carried with me into my early 20s. At a certain point, the internet became ubiquitous enough to where I could access pornography at any time on my computer. It was only within the past 5 or 6 years that I had a shift in my awareness and I began to look at all of these things in a different way. And the act of masturbation is something that has taken a serious backseat in my life as something that I'm focused on or looking to do. I've experimented with maintaining my semen for long periods of time, just as an experiment to see what would happen. And at a certain point, I guess I sort of normalized with the habit of doing it maybe twice a month, just to normalize my energy flow. And so this is what I mean by, I'm giving a male perspective here. You know, as a male, we have the energy that sparks life within the female womb. And we have that energy constantly being produced in our bodies and coursing through our energetic fields. So that energy manifests itself in a different way than it does, I would assume, in a female body. Not that it's much different fundamentally, but just objectively, it's a different kind of energy. Even though the female body experiences an orgasm just like the male body is capable. But anyway, I really started to examine sex and the orgasm in the wake of this experience that I had. Obviously, I don't need to tell you that sex is everywhere. We even have cliches about it, right? Sex sells. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, they have no issue putting that right in our faces. It's in every commercial. It's in every television show and movie. It's everywhere. And obviously everyone listening to this has experienced an orgasm at some point in their life. And so you know that it is a good feeling, and that just makes sense that it would be designed in that way because, of course, this is how the human race perpetuates itself. That's the original design, that, well, this orgasmic experience from the male will produce a child when it is done inside the female. And so I'm asking myself, well, if that's the case, why would we need so much of a reminder regarding the experience itself? This is something that we could all easily intuit. So why is there sex education in public schools? Why do they start so young as far as quote-unquote educating children on sex? Surely this is something they would naturally figure out on their own, or their parents would explain to them at some point in time. Well, like most things, you take something and pervert it if you want to control people through it. For example, I recently saw that California, in its infinite wisdom, has produced a new set of guidelines regarding sexual education in public schools. And as a part of this, one of the things that was introduced is known as condom races. And they were having these 10, 11-year-old children engaging in this relay race or some other kind of race like that. You get the idea. That ended in them putting condoms on fully erect models of penises. You sit there and you ask yourself, is this really something that an 11-year-old needs to learn? You know, really? So you see what I'm saying here as far as how it is so promoted in a certain way. And obviously, as a part of these new guidelines, they're getting into the gender pronouns that you should and should not be able to say. They're teaching about gender reassignment. They're getting into all sorts of very controversial and strange areas of what is referred to as sexual education. It's everywhere in advertising, both overtly and subconsciously, subliminally. Go take a look at Amazon's logo and really look at it. Really look at that little arrow that goes from A to Z. And take some time and think about what it also looks like. Use your imagination. That's what I'm referring to here. Just little things like that. It's constantly thrown in our face in this way that is sublime. And so it's like this little conundrum that's going on here where, okay, this is the act, sexual intercourse, that produces life, that produces a child. And yet at the same time, this act is being constantly referenced and promoted in the minds of everyone that has any sort of exposure to media. Obviously, pornography is the most blatant example of the perversion that is taking place when you contextualize it and juxtapose it next to the act of sexual intercourse itself. That is a connection between two human beings in its purest form, a connection between two human beings that is one where each person is openly and freely giving themselves to the other person with no pretense, and in a way that is sharing something amazing. And from this energy, a child is produced. You take that and you put it next to the image of someone sitting in front of their computer screen looking at pixels of individuals having sexual intercourse with each other just as an act of hedonistic self-gratification. That person is staring at the screen and then having an orgasm to those images without any human contact whatsoever. When you sit there and think about it like that, it really is quite disturbing, isn't it? And you know, it's been a long time since I actually watched any pornography, but as I'm saying this, I can still see images of certain pornographic scenes, and I'm not even talking about produced pornography. I'm just talking about, you know, the quote-unquote amateur stuff that you would see on the internet sites. You know, I have those images, some of them still in my mind, that when I think about this subject, they kind of pop in and out of there. I mean, that's how powerful this stuff is. I mean, in the same way that all of the images that we take in are so very powerful. And then it's very easy to trace the disconnection that eventually manifests itself as it relates to sexuality. I don't even like using that word. It's not even because it's taboo and it has a certain political correctness surrounding it where, oh, this isn't something that we talk openly about. It's just the word itself. It has this, well, I guess it has that pornographic charge to it. Sexuality. The way that it's discussed in and promoted by media, you know, they promote a sex life. You look at all of the magazines that you see like at a grocery store, all the popular magazines, and oftentimes you'll see on the front cover, you know, 10 ways to supercharge your sex life. It's just ridiculous phrases like that. You know, just the whole idea of having a sex life is ridiculous in the way that it is described. And then as an extension of that, you have the whole issue of how people are treating each other due to the influence of pornography, where, especially for men, women become objects that are just there to have sex with. They are playing out the scenes that they've witnessed over and over again throughout their whole life, and they're even mimicking them when they're together with the person that they're with. And it's just a very sad situation. I don't know how else to put it. The state of mind of most people as it relates to their body and how it interacts with other people around them. I mean, I catch myself doing this often too, you know, where I'll be somewhere and I'll see an attractive woman and I'll catch my mind viewing that girl as an object in that way. And I have to sit there and go, what are you even doing? That's some old programming coming to the surface that I thought I was done with, you know? And, oh, nope, not done with that. There it is again. But yeah, I started discussing this due to the thoughts that I experienced while I was actually having an orgasm. And I just sat there thinking, what is going on? Why am I doing this? What is it about this? Like I said, that is so intoxicating to everyone. When you go long periods of time without doing it, you really see how it controls everyone around you and how it's promoted everywhere in this deviant way. And, this really got me thinking along these lines of just the fact that we have this idea that we should all be engaging in recreational sex outside of just producing life. And I know this is going to be a very difficult topic for people to entertain because, like most things, this is just something that is well established and accepted. Hey, we all have sex. That's what we do. I mean, most people force themselves into relationships simply to have a lot of sex. Yeah, the whole birth control angle to all this is interesting as well. The fact that it is so easy for any woman to go out there and obtain birth control so that they can have as much sex as they want without the risk of having a child. And obviously, I'm not discussing in any way whether or not that would be a good decision if you were going to pursue a lot of recreational sex. That's for you to determine on your own. I'm merely discussing this again as a larger social phenomenon and just asking questions about it. I'm not casting a dispersion on you if you in some way fit into something that I'm discussing here. And you have to understand, you don't have to, but it would be great if you would understand for the benefit of what I'm discussing here that I experience a lot of what I'm discussing here. So in many ways, I'm talking about things that I know, so I'm going through the very same thing that you are. So that is to say, please don't take any of this personally. I promise you, if you're listening to this, I have no one person in my mind when I'm discussing any of this. But anyway, it's just interesting to me how widely accepted recreational sex is. And the plot thickens when you look at the history of sexual deviancy. For example, you have the Kama Sutra, which, if you go by conventional history, was written in the 4th century AD in Sanskrit originally. So this is an ancient text that is discussing sexuality, sexual positions, and just the act of sex in general. Let's do the math. 1,400 years ago. A long time ago, right? And it's interesting, some circles that would refer to themselves as spiritual look at things like the Kama Sutra and they try to explain that it's this higher form of sexual relationships. You'll come across some males, and most of the time they use this to prop themselves up as advanced, who will say, well, I've perfected a technique to have sexual intercourse but not orgasm. And the insinuation is that they are an advanced being and having evolved sexual relationships as a result of this. But I hope you can see that, sure, this shows that they have some very strong abdominal muscles and a lot of self-control. And hey, congratulations. But at the same time, you're still having just as much recreational sex as anyone else. You're just doing it in a different way. In other words, you're not coming to grips with the fundamental question of whether or not this is something that we should all be doing. My point is This is something that's been going on for a long time. It's not something that's just coming to the surface with pornography. Pornography is just the modern version of it. And obviously it is on a downward spiral. It's trending in just worse and worse directions. But at the same time, you can look at things like the ancient Greek quote-unquote philosophers. And there is this long tradition of the ancient Greeks, again, if you believe the conventional recounting of history, there is this long tradition of the Greeks engaging in pederasty, which is a relationship between a grown adult male and a usually teenage child. This was a part of their society. It was accepted, these relationships. And oftentimes it was as a part of initiations. So again, this is something that's been going on for a long, long time. People are discussing pedophilia now without any sort of historical context for just how long things like this have been going on. I mean, it was going on in Rome too. Obviously, there is this energetic aspect to the orgasm that is being siphoned through the perversion of society in general. And this is quite logical if you look at society from the perspective of someone that is running an organization that is designed to control people. If they have all of this energy, and this energy could be channeled in positive ways, well, hey, we don't want that energy being channeled like that, so let's create all of these different avenues through which that energy can be perverted and used to our own benefit. Essentially, we would have, from their perspective, millions of people orgasming every day to a computer screen or a phone or a tablet, wasting their energy on the very propaganda that we have given them that depicts sexual intimacy in a way that it was not designed to be engaged in, if it was designed to be engaged in at all, in the way that it is promoted by pornography, which is a derivative of the Kama Sutra and other ancient ideas about sex and recreational sex and all of the different positions that people experiment with and the whole thing, right? Well, we have them all wasting their energy on that, and so they lose sight of any larger, broader understanding of their energy and how it could be used. And even if you have that broader understanding, you can then abuse it in a different way, right? This is what a lot of the occult writings are about, and a lot of the secret societies focus on this, and then the derivative is the way that it's been used in ritual abuse. But just as a less disturbing example and a more applicable example, I've seen blog posts from ordinary individuals, or at least they seemed like ordinary individuals, who openly discuss how every time that they orgasm, they would do so with the intent of manifesting a certain thing. So in other words, they would have an orgasm, and as the energy was being brought to the surface, whether male or female, I think this case was a male, as that energy was being brought to the surface, they were envisioning a certain image in their mind of something they wanted to manifest. They did this over and over and over again, and they eventually manifested what they desired, which goes to the power of the energy that is inside of you. And secret societies have taken that general principle and applied it to larger rituals in order to achieve things that they want to achieve. It's difficult for me to discuss this without casting a dispersion on that practice, simply because I find no value in that. I have no interest in manifesting anything in that way. That's just me. That doesn't mean that I'm right or I have it all figured out in that respect. So please, don't be offended if you have engaged in that sort of thing and you're listening to this. You could be right and I might be wrong, I don't know. Just for me, I don't look to manifest anything because I understand a little bit about how energy works and the situation that we're in here, and I just want to avoid at all costs imposing my energy on someone else in a way that it will negatively impact both of us. Just because I don't fully understand completely what is taking place because I'm just not at that level yet. So I'm trying to be very careful about how I'm impacting everyone around me, especially when it comes to things like manifestation and creating some situation for yourself using techniques that you probably don't have any business experimenting with yet. Or at all. Again, this is kind of a similar discussion to whether recreational sex is something we should even be engaging in. It's going to the whole law of attraction, well, quote-unquote law of attraction discussion. Okay, there's something to this manifestation thing, but should I even be doing that? Just because something is possible doesn't mean that you should be doing it. Because it could always be a situation where it's just another layer of the control system that you just had no concept of before you became more aware. Then you become more aware, you learn this new information, you think, well, this is the highest truth, and so I should be able to engage in this with no problems. But maybe it's another layer to the control system that is going to cause you more problems on a level that you don't understand yet. And you might not even understand in this lifetime. You might not even be capable of understanding it given your level of awareness and how our awareness functions while incarnated in this reality. So you could be creating a lot of problems for yourself that you're not aware of with this whole idea of manifesting something for yourself. And again, what are you really searching for? What is so bad about life that you need to try to manifest this idea of perfection? And look, I get it. I go through periods like this myself where I think, maybe I should try to experiment with this whole energy thing and create some scenario where I'm just completely free to do whatever I want. Obviously, as a part of this, I would create enough currency that I would never have to work again, blah, blah, blah. You know the whole story, as these things tend to go. And I always come back to, nah, I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm just pretty happy that I'm even having this experience in the first place. It's quite amazing, even that I'm speaking right now and aware of everything that's going on. And sure, there are a lot of problems going on here, but at the same time, just being aware is amazing. And that's enough for me to the point where I'll just go with the flow as best that I can. And I'll just let things unfold. And again, maybe that's a mistake. Maybe that's something that I'll eventually pull myself out of and come to a different conclusion on. I don't know. That's just how I feel right now. But it's how I've felt for years at this point, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. So I feel comfortable enough expressing that to you. But it sure seems like, based on my experience, just letting things unfold in this way, everything eventually just falls into place where it should be. Because the true intelligence of creation that is really orchestrating all of this, it knows a little bit more than you do. And things that you might view as detrimental, often in hindsight, you look at and you say, well, you know, that actually did help me a little bit. That series of events led me to this conclusion, which led to this action, which was beneficial. But then you get into a lot of gray areas with that discussion where you say, well, yeah, but what happens if you're a child that was abused sexually when you were 5 or 6 years old? You could look at it like I just described and say, well, yes, that was a terrible thing that happened to me, but it led me down this path that brought me to where I am now. And overall, I view that as more beneficial than it otherwise might have been if that had not happened. You could look at it like that, but at the same time, no person ever deserves to experience anything like that. So maybe there's a little bit of an interplay here between this profoundly sick society that we are all involved in and contributing to in many ways, where things like that take place, and then at the same time you have the more magical aspects of creation and imagination that are playing out alongside that. So it's probably both things happening at once. And that is how you can deconstruct arguments that you'll see out there from, again, spiritual circles that will try to say things like, well, this is a school that you chose to come to and you signed this contract to experience being sexually abused when you were 4 years old. You know, for the benefit of the whole, to have that experience and be able to describe it to everyone. And you just sit there and you say, no, that's not it. There's no reason for anyone to ever experience that. That is something that a tyrant would tell their slave. They would say, yes, you chose to experience that. Don't worry about it. You know, so I think there's a little bit of both things going on. Which I suppose is another way of saying that if our awareness was experiencing a different realm where we were not exposed to all of the things that we are exposed to here, perhaps we would have a completely different mentality as it related to sexual intercourse or the act of the orgasm itself. You could envision a situation where this energy was just constantly maintained for the most part by both males and females until a situation presented itself where two people came together in resonance to create new life. And that would be the extent of it. It wouldn't be something that people sought out to do repeatedly as a form of recreation. Maybe it could be something like that. Hey, it could be a situation where in a different realm, not exposed to anything that we're exposed to here, maybe there isn't as great of a need to reproduce because lifespans are incredibly longer than they are here. But anyway, all of this started because I was discussing sexual deviancy and the act of the orgasm itself and what is this all about, what's going on here. So I just wanted to talk that out in real time for my own benefit, and hopefully you got something out of it too. And I really wanted to put this out there because this is something that no one discusses openly and freely. And hopefully, at the very least, this will just get you thinking about what you're actually doing the next time that you have the impulse to have an orgasm. Really think about what it is you're doing and where that energy is going. It's weird. It's like, I know I'm a human being, or at least I know I'm having that experience currently. And as a result, I can relate to all of the experiences that a human being has and discuss them and everything that goes along with that sort of introspection. But at the same time, I don't feel any attachment to my body or this experience in any way. It's so very strange. In many ways, I don't even feel like I'm a human being. And so obviously that makes it very difficult to discuss topics like this one, which pretty much every human being on the planet is fully engaged in and fully in support of. For example, there could be someone listening to this who is married and has children. What are they supposed to do with this information? Well, like I said, maybe just think a little more deeply about the energy that accompanies an orgasm and what they are giving it away to, how they are expressing it. But obviously I'm on a different path than that, so I don't want you to take what I'm saying here and go to your partner and say, hey, I've been thinking about this because of something I heard, and well, I don't think we should be intimate anymore. You know what I mean? It would have to be something where it was mutual. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that on the end here just to be clear about the fact that this is a personal journal of my own experiences, and I'm coming at it from the perspective of an individual who has no attachments in the way that some other people might already have attachments. So, take all of this with that in mind. Okay? Later.